You know, the youth has gone wild. All right, Mace, we got to talk about it because we were watching OTAs once again. The energy feels different, man. It just does around the building. Sean Payton's happy. He's excited. Maybe it is the youth going wild that is leading to this new energy.
Sean Payton's got his team. He's got his quarterback. He's got his offense. All feels good right now. But the question is, how will it feel when youth makes those mistakes? Because the thing with young players is you've got to live with bumps. There will be bad days as they grow.
Yes.
And it's all fine and dandy sitting here in the springtime. But what happens when you go out there and some of the youthful mistakes include a PI penalty, a holding penalty, a false start, not lining up in the right spot, forcing a timeout to be wasted, not getting everybody set, etc. So, yeah, like I want to see how it looks when it gets to the season, but I'm okay riding the bumps and the ups and downs of youth. I'm okay with the vagaries of that because this team needs the energy that comes with that. So you have more mistakes, but you have more energy. The question is, how is Sean Payton going to feel about that when you get down to brass tacks and things start counting? But right now, today, feels pretty good.
Yeah, it does feel good. And I don't know where you want to start, but I kind of want to start with Jonah Ellis because we did get to see him last week and we got to see him this week. And again, it's just practice. We get it, everybody. Okay. We don't need you guys are getting excited about practice stuff. We're reporting on what we've observed. And what we observed on Thursday is Jonah Ellis was wrecking plays. Now, Baron Brownie did a good job as well. And he's maybe not part of this show because we're talking about youthful players. But Jonah Ellis was energetic. He was firing up his team after a play that he didn't even make, by the way. But there was would have been a sack, and he's firing up his guys as they go back to the huddle after a big play defensively. But he was wrecking stuff out there as a pass rusher.
Well, it's the tandem of moves, right? The fact that he has multiple moves. He kind of downplayed it when you brought it up a few weeks ago. He said basically he only had 3 moves. How many did you tell him you thought he had?
I think he has 6.
Yes. Maybe he's selling himself short a little bit, but we were seeing those moves today, and he was messing things up. I almost said another word there.
Careful, Mace. Careful.
Yes. He was messing things up for the Broncos offense today or on Thursday, and that was pretty good.
Yeah, well, doesn't that tell you if you're going to cuss about what he was doing like that? I mean, he was energized to be out there. He was, kind of proving himself. How excited do you have to be if you're Jonah Ellis, right? And watching your father play in the National Football League, then getting your shot to get out there for the first time since we didn't get to see him last week. He was putting on a show. And I think you talk about, the tandem of moves. Now I think if you have an alpha in Baron Browning, who had a really good day, and we'll get to that on Saturday's show, and then you couple that with Ellis, if Ellis turns into that alpha, wow, now you've got some pinchers.
Exactly. Now, are they going to develop to that level in time to where with Baron Browning, he's in his contract year, with Jonah Ellis, can he develop there to where a year from now you're talking about not going edge in the first round? Like right now, I'd say where the Broncos likely to go in round 1, I think you'd think edge. I think you'd think offensive tackle if you move on from Garett Bolles, right? This year is about finding out if you have to go edge early. I don't want to go too many conclusions here because, again, we're talking about low contact work. But when you see the speed and the suddenness that Jonah Ellis has out there, you're really encouraged. Last week we saw that from Nick Benito, but that's not a surprise given that's where his strengths have always resided. Seeing with Jonah Ellis today, especially getting out there after he missed last week when he was still coming off of the injury that he suffered last season at Utah, that's pretty encouraging right there.
Yeah, and not to give too much away, but he chased down a run play on the backside, and I was standing next to our friend Paul Klee, and I was like, it's exactly what he needs to do. If he doesn't get home as a rusher and the play goes away from him, he's going to chase you down. and he's got the speed and awareness to do just that. Young players, do we want to get into more rookies? Are we considering second year guys? Because we have to talk about more than the Marvin Mims big play, which we did talk about on regular OBT on Thursday. But I think we can include second year guys, right, in this conversation about, hey, here's some youthful players. Marvin Mims now getting a larger opportunity.
Yeah, and taking advantage of it, doing more things, more variety of routes that he's running out there, looking actually really precise and crisp out there so far. So you like that. Yeah, he's part of that as well, because if Riley Moss had played and had taken part in practice, we'd be talking about him probably. Of course, he had a little back spasm on Wednesday. Broncos opted to hold him out. Sean Payton saying it's not all that serious. But yeah, last year's rookie class, even though Marvin Mims Jr. did make the Pro Bowl as punt returner, it was such a redshirt year, basically, that it's almost like they're lumped in with this year's rookie class as well. And we go back to what George Payton said back after the season ended about how many of those guys he saw as potential starters. One of them we saw out there with the first team today, and that was Alex Forsyth, who didn't get a jersey at all last year, but is somebody the Broncos see as a potential center. He and Luke Wattenberg are part of a rotation at center to this point, and really represent the key part of what the Broncos are doing in terms of mixing and matching and figuring things out. I mean, we're mentioning Marvin Mims Jr. He had his biggest reception of the day from Jarrett Stidham. And of course, Jarrett Stidham was working with the twos. So that alone tells you about the degree of mixing and matching and moving around that we're seeing at some positions like wide receiver, like running back, like offensive line.
Right. And Sean Payton, this was your question, Mace, one of your questions to Sean Payton about, hey, this O-line rotation and Forsyth there. And I'm glad we got to see that, by the way. It was one of the things. Did we talk about it? We've said so much, Mace. But on our preview of what we wanted to see, one of the things was I wanted to see Alex Forsyth with the first team.
Yes, and we did.
Okay, so you had to ask Sean Payton about it. Here's what Coach had to say.
I want to see the centers with the different guards. I want to see the quarterbacks with the different offensive lines. And look, there's a lot ahead of us where you begin to then, and so that's why, my message to the coaches is like, rotate them in there. I'm not going to look at a practice snap and get upset because Billy's in with this group. I'm not. And so this is the time of the season where you can do that, and not worry about, the quarterback's getting hit because you have a younger offensive lineman maybe at one position. So I want to see the rotations, and they don't have to follow a set pattern. And it's important to tell the players that too.
Probably important to tell the media that as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because we're going to read. What are we going to do, Mace? We're going to read into it.
We're going to read too much into it. And that's why, I mean, we can't necessarily detail every single one of them, but we can tell you Jarrett Stidham was out there with the twos because it's been talked about. It's public knowledge, well discussed. And he hits Marvin Mims Jr. on a big play. There you go, right? Alex Forsyth this week, his turn with the one. So his turn snapping to Bo Nix. By the way, I asked another question about Forsyth. That just for the record, that was, I think, Parker Gabriel of the Denver Post.
Yeah, he was looking at Parker's side.
Yeah,
you asked a different question on.
I asked about just how Forsyth specifically is coming on, but that statement is interesting. It also reflects just how we're learning about players and how I make depth chart notes when I'm watching practice, but for the second consecutive week, it's a lot of guys. Oh, well, they're working with the ones. Now they're working with the twos. They really are trying to ascertain what they have. I think part of this is seeing which young players are ready for more and which ones aren't. I don't know if we'll even see full clarity on this by minicamp in a couple of weeks.
I wouldn't imagine so. On these sort of decisions, I think we got to get to week 2 of the preseason, not even training camp, the preseason, before we have a clear-cut answer. And not only that, Mace, who's ready for prime time, what kind of combination works? You know, because you have combinations out there, and it's like, okay, what's better for the players around them, even the veterans? That's where these young players have to prove themselves. Like, okay, I can be out here because I'm the better fit or combination with these older guys.
Yeah, and communication matters as well because you're looking for pairings. I mean, I think obviously you're getting the cohesion down pat. I do think it's an advantage when you're working together. And if you're working consistently with the ones, and there are some places where there aren't a rotation. Like, I think we can pretty clearly see, for example, that Brandon Jones and PJ Locke look like they're going to be the safety combination. PJ Locke, one of those guys, it seems like he's young, but he's not. He's actually been around here going into 5 years now. And he's one of the guys that Sean Payton said looks like he's emerging as a leader. So whether you're talking about rookies or second-year players, or you're talking about guys who are a little more experienced, but they took the long way. PJ Locke, a backup until the back half of last season. You're talking about a group of players for whom they're either stepping into new roles or they haven't been in these roles very long. How will they grow in that? How will they handle it? It's unknown, and the unknown can be scary. And this is why you're going to see most prognosticators around the country pick this club to finish last. I think I said it the way Lou Brown said, although I think I have to go. Every sports writer in the country has picked us to finish last. The local press figures we'd just we'd save everybody a lot of time and trouble if we just went out and shot ourselves. Me, I'm for wasting sports writers' time.
And this is one of the reasons why I think, Mace, they could surprise people, because you and I have been around this game long enough. And what's really cool is sometimes you're too young to know you're not supposed to be good yet. And we'll have to see it play out. And again, they're not winning a game in November. There's this part of the schedule that's going to really suck.
You're already saying that. Much just like, is this like Vance Joseph's going to be fired? They're not winning a game in November.
You think they're going to win a game in November? You've seen that schedule.
Maybe the Raiders game.
Okay, let's give them the Raiders game then.
I don't like the Ravens game in Baltimore. I don't like the Chiefs game in Kansas City. And even though it's a home game, I do not like the Falcons, because I think the Falcons are going to be really good. Maybe they're not really good, but they're going to be playoff caliber, specifically because you're going to have the marriage of scheme and quarterback and, yes, personnel.
Yes.
Atlanta's going to be better than a lot of people think.
They're super tough to match up with, but I'll say this, like, you're so young with the Broncos, and we'll play this clip of Youth Gone Wild of Sean Payton talking about it, but like, they just don't know that they're not supposed to be good. Like, a lot of times as a veteran, and you're just like, here we go again. And it's that mindset of like, oh, we're not there yet. When you're young and you're Jonah Ellis, you're running out there, making plays, like all these guys, they don't know, like, hey, you're not there yet. No. They're there.
The thing is, you just got to make the leap with these guys. If they're playing well, the young guys are flashing. Make the leap and accept the consequences, right? I'm thinking about this last year because it came up again when Sean Payton was talking. The whole thing of Marvin Mims Jr., he looks great out there coming into his second year. Why didn't he play more? Well, you got Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton. No, okay. Like, you can get lost in the shuffle, that. If you want the young guy to play, you play him. Okay? To use a baseball example, Carlos Gonzalez, Cargo, great player for the Rockies. And he's struggling. He's a young guy. They got him in the Matt Holliday trade. Comes over. He's struggling in the big leagues. And at one point, Jim Tracy, the manager at the time, was asked how long Cargo is going to be in the lineup. And Tracy said until he figures it out. Well, he figured it out. The patience was rewarded. You got to do that. Now, that also requires thinking differently than most NFL teams think. NFL teams tend to think in the moment and think about the urgency of the result that Sunday or that Saturday or that Thursday or that Monday or that Friday or even that Wednesday now. I think I got all the days of the week that there's going to be an NFL game because there's no NFL games on Tuesdays. But this year's cease is about finding out what these young players can do and growing with them. And that growth can be pretty fast. And that might mean you start out slow, but maybe it means November isn't done. Maybe the Broncos will say, never mind the darkness. We can still we still can find a way in November. Maybe there's a surprise coming because you take a loss or two early that maybe you're hoping not to take, but then those players get better, that core gets better, they grow, and they start stealing some games. Look, last year, even though it wasn't a young team, the Broncos start 0-3, give up a 70-burger down in Miami. They fall behind 3 scores in Chicago. This team looks like the worst team in football. And by the end of October, they're beating a couple of playoff-bound teams and starting a 5-game winning streak that included 4 wins over teams that went to the playoffs: Green Bay, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cleveland. So that doesn't happen if you don't have growth. Now, growth isn't necessarily a straight incline, as we saw. There was a regression in December, but yeah, I mean, I think this team finishes about 7-10, but maybe it gets there in a completely different way than I'm thinking about. Maybe they get punked by Carolina in October when they're still figuring things out. But then you get to November, early December, and maybe you pull off an upset of Kansas City in week 18. Maybe you go out to Cincinnati in week 17 and pull off an upset. These things happen, right? I mean, Arizona last year was terrible for 2/3 of the season. They go to Philadelphia and win, right? It happens. Growth happens. So you just got to live with the bumps. You can't say, oh, one mistake, that player's out. You can't do that. You got to resist the temptation. You got to, if you believe in the players, you believe in the young core, you got to keep sending them up, man.
Keep doing it. Keep going. And you quote November Rain. I'll just say, don't you cry tonight. I'll still love you, Mace baby.
Yes. You know who sounds excited about youth, though? Sean Payton does.
Very much so.
This first half of these OTAs have gone really good. I mean, really good. And I told him that. I like the energy. I feel like we're younger. And you kind of feel that at practice.
I like the energy. Okay. So here's the equation for the Broncos if they're going to accomplish something this year. That the bumps, the ups and downs, the mistakes of youth are counterbalanced by making a few more plays because they've got more energy, more spunk.
Yep.
You kind of have to do it because you're sitting there with a $53 million crater in your salary cap. It forces you to be creative, and it can force you to play young guys maybe earlier than you anticipate, and you see them grow. Look at the Rams last year. Look how many young players they had. It was out of necessity because they were in cap hell.
Right.
If they have a functional salary cap situation, does Puka Nacua play as much as he did? No.
Nope.
But they shoved him out there because they needed him. They're going to need Marvin Mims Jr. They're going to need Jonah Ellis. They would have potentially needed Drew Sanders, but he's on the shelf probably until at least November. They're going to need Alex Forsythe or Luke Wattenberg, one of those two, to be a starting center, ideally, although you do have Sam Mustipher in reserve in case one of them falters. You're not going to make anything happen this year unless these young players are allowed to grow. So let them grow. Don't cut down the crops before they have a chance to mature, right? I mean, does anybody cut down corn when it's knee high at the 4th of July? No, right? Unless you're Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to lose his farm. He's plowing under his field. By the way, here's the thing. Ray Kinsella is the character he plays. Ray Kinsella is incredibly stupid. Okay. He plows under his field. It looks like it's late August based on the height of the corn. Okay. You can't wait 2 months because a winter passes. The ghosts don't start showing up in Iowa until the following season. I mean, just think of how much money he wasted because he had to build that field right then and there. He couldn't wait 2 months and then harvest the corn and then actually build the field. Okay.
He was excited, Mace. He was too excited.
He was hearing the voices. I mean, in the movie, of course, turned out not voices in his head, although maybe they were in his head, but other people heard them, like James Earl Jones's character, Terrence Mann, right?
Well,
go with the distance.
I watched some interesting things. I was actually watching a documentary on the Hopi Indian tribes, and they felt that when you got passionate about something, it was actually your future self trying to get you to hurry up to get to where you were.
Okay.
So maybe Kevin Costner's character was so excited because his future self knew that he needed to get where he was.
What does this say about me then? Where do I need to get? What am I passionate about?
Football.
Or baseball.
Baseball for sure. Yeah, that too. We got some baseball talk when we get to the special team stuff, but let's talk about Audric Estime, because you mentioned how they're going to need Alex Forsyth and Wattenberger, and they're going to need Marvin Mims. They're going to need Estime, but we found out it wasn't a quad. It was a knee. Here's Sean Payton on the update on Audric Estime.
And I'll just be honest with the Audric. So we went ahead, had a PRP. We did a small scope procedure just to make sure everything's clean. It is. He'll be available at the start of training camp. So we won't see him working through the rest of these OTAs, but on the conservative side, he's going to be just fine. It was all good news. And he'll stay in rehab, but he'll be full go at the start of training camp. It's a knee. Yeah, it's a knee.
Okay.
Full go.
Full go. And the other thing also, the important thing for Audric Estime is being ready for training camp, because as you and I discussed, when you're a big power back like he is, what happens during OTAs isn't necessarily going to play to your strengths, right? His strengths are going to reveal themselves when he's running through people. Right now, you can't do that. So it's not the worst thing. Now, you learn about timing, you get the rhythm of the offense down, this, that, and the other. But I don't think it's anything where it's a huge setback. If he's missing time in training camp, that's huge. This is not. And then Riley Moss, of course, like I mentioned, back spasms. He wasn't out there today. He just had him yesterday, hopefully back next week. Still not seeing Greg Dulcich. Greg Dulcich, well, we see him, but we see him standing and watching. Once again.
Yeah, it's hat day for Greg Dulcich. A lot of days.
There's really not. Is there ever a hat day for Greg Dulcich with that mane of his?
With that hair, like it's complicated.
Yeah, that's kind of hard. I mean, when you have the Weird Al Yankovic curls going on.
He definitely has that sort of look, but they need him out there as soon as they can get it. But they're being smart with Estime. That's at least what I took away, Mace, is like, okay, it's not serious, and they're going to keep him out until training camp. Okay, they're being smart. I like that.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, you're allowing him to recover, get full rest, give him a couple of months, basically. Like if you had the procedure in the last few days, it's going to be nearly 2 months until the start of training camp. Give him time to get all the way back, and then you're feeling pretty good about where he can go. That's this is one of those things where it's newsworthy right now, but I think long-term there's absolutely nothing to it.
Yeah, and there's a young player that we have not yet discussed that we need to on this show, Mace. It's Orange and Blue Today. Make sure to like and comment and share and all those sorts of things. It's Jaleel McLaughlin, because we got to see Jaleel again, once again, show that world-class speed. Blake Watson's pushing him, though. Blake Watson with another strong day as a runner and as a receiver. Nobody's going to outwork Jaleel, though. So you're going to need the young guy to come through with whatever role he's got in that backfield.
Jaleel's basically going to say, I dare you to cut me. And in the end, I think there's going to be a spot for him. on the 53.
Isn't he the only one that we can say, like, I can guarantee Jaleel McLaughlin will be on the 53. I can't with Javonte. I can't with Samaje. Estime, okay, sure, he's a draft pick, whatever. And I can't with Blake Watson, as much as you and I appreciate Blake Watson. So there's really only two backs we can say for sure Jaleel will be here and Estime will be here.
I can't, but at the same time, I think Javonte Williams is looking a little bit sharper and more spry out there. That's a good sign. I'm more encouraged about the way he looks physically at this point than Tim Patrick. Of course, Javonte did play last year. Tim Patrick is working his way back. He's at a different point, of course, he also missed 2 years. So it's a different set of circumstances for Tim Patrick. But I like where Javonte is. I thought he this week was cutting more sharply and looked more fluid and quicker than at any point since he's had that injury.
So I'm going to ask you this, and we got to save part of this discussion for our what if on Javonte. We have so much for you guys, and we appreciate you all for watching. Did they learn from Javonte to how to handle Estime? Is that why we're seeing Estime handled in this manner? Whereas Javonte, he still doesn't look that he does look better than he did last week, Mace, but he still doesn't look like old Javonte.
Not just him. We haven't seen Caden Stearns out there yet, too.
Very true.
They're taking their time. Even Greg Dulcich, we're sitting here. He had the foot problem that jumped up in the first practice that he was back before the Detroit game in December, and they're taking it slowly with him. You do get the very strong sense that they are being more cautious right now. And that's fine.
I appreciate that.
Yes, it's smart. I think also with Javonte, he was not only hitting his marks in his rehab, but surpassing them. And everyone got so excited, right? But sometimes you have to have a more sober-minded perspective. And unfortunately, I don't think there was a sober-minded perspective with Javonte. I think there was a little bit of urgency and excitement at the progress that he was making. And the fact that he was out there playing, because he played in that 49er preseason game. Mm-hmm. So he's out there in a game 10 and a half months after what really is a 12-month series of knee injuries. Maybe even more, maybe even up to 13 or 14 months, realistically, given the multi-ligament damage that happened there. And I feel like what we're seeing now is a little more prudence.
I'd almost go to the 18-month mark. It used to be that way in the 90s. I'll go Terry Allen. Let's hot Terry Allen talk, some Clemson talk.
Wow.
But remember Terry would like shred his knee, miss a year, rush for 1,000, shred his knee, miss a year, rush for 1,000. Like,
yes.
He did that like 3 or 4 times and played a long time with like shredding his knee in the 90s when the technology, medical science, it's just science, Mace. It wasn't what it is today. So, give Javonte a little more time.
The gift that we need at our disposal is from She Blinded Me with Science video, Thomas Dolby. The professor. Science!
Science!
She blinded me with science.
With science. Do, do, do. How do you do, fellow kids? We're talking about her. It's Herbie Hancock. There you go. Youth's gone wild, Mace. They're going to need it. They're going to need it.
Yes.
I'm okay with that, though. And maybe that's where being around the youngsters, right? Here's Sean Payton walking into the locker room. How do you do, fellow kids? Like,
oh my gosh.
Maybe that's been an injection of energy, right? Like some youthful energy. You're around the younger guys and they've got excitement and you're excited now. Like, Sean definitely seems more energized.
Yeah.
Check year.
Out with Sean Payton. Check out my kicks. Check out Mike Jordan's, because of course he's a Jordan brand person and influencer, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Although did he wear the same shoes this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's atypical for him, right?
Very much so. Usually he's getting a different pair, and I'm like this, pointing, hey, I know that. I know those shoes.
Yeah.
I don't get them for free like he does.
Oh, that would be nice. Like I need that hookup.
Yeah, I need that hookup. One thing I've always wanted to do is payday is J Day, where I give a pair of shoes to someone in need. Because growing up poor, like really poor, I used to argue with Derek Wolf about how poor I was compared to him. I was like, "Did you ever steal corn out of your neighbor's field to eat?" Speaking of corn, because I've been that poor, and growing up, like basketball shoes were. Why do you think I have 111 pairs of Jordans?
That's
It's
incredible.
because in high school, when people had Jordans, I was wearing the Kmart, the Sykes, right?
Yeah.
And they were like hand-me-down Sykes. We didn't even get them. I had a hand-me-down for my cousin.
Wow.
So, and again, maybe this is, my therapy, Mace. I'm on the couch with you now, but it's like, I understand how much basketball shoes or Jordans especially can mean to a young person. So I've always wanted to do that. Where I'm giving away a pair of shoes every month or every 2 weeks to someone in need, because it is
awesome.
Shoes are something that are so important. I mean, you can tell a lot about someone when you look at their shoes.
Exactly. Shoes tell a story. Like there's like one photographer who always takes a picture of like the shoes that somebody's wearing at a Broncos press conference. It's always interesting. Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Youth Gone Wild, Mace. We still have a ton to say on our brain dump show, which is scheduled for Saturday.
But
this show comes out, but
as was said on The Simpsons, the children are our future. Yeah.
Are you ready for the children?
There we go.
Oh, you ready, children?
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. YouTube don't demonetize us for playing Simpsons. So
sorry.
We'll keep our fingers crossed. They're very sensitive about that, Mace. That AI scans for everything.
Yeah, I know. Shoot.
We love it.
Although I think we kept it short. I'd like to think we kept it short enough.
But, I don't know if there's a time limit or not, but I know it's something. Like I've had the conversation with Rachel, because some of the videos from like the Avs games and stuff will get demonetized because in the background they were playing Blink 182 or whatever.
Yes,
that's just in the background, man. Can we all get along? Yeah. Come on, YouTube. Our YouTube overlords, Mace.
We must serve them. Big brother AI is watching you. Like, hey, I always say, the Orwellian dystopia, we did it to ourselves.
We're here. It's not 1984. It's 2024. What, 40 years? Wow. Because it's been 30 years since the release of The Crow, which I saw in theaters, by the way, Mace. Did you know who the digital artist, the digital designer was? And his name's in big letters at the end of the movie, not the little stuff that goes by fast. The digital editor of The Crow from 1994, which I love. I'm going to cry like a baby watching it again. His name is Andrew Mason. It came across the screen like just large as ever. Andrew Mason.
Wow.
Hey, now you Super Bowl ring. You're on The Crow.
Now you know what I was doing in my younger years.
It's all good. It is all good. Well, you know what you're doing now. You're helping us out on YouTube. How do you do that, Mace?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss a vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.